All right, morning, guys. We are moving on to our last of, oh, that was loud, to our last of the mixed media projects that you're going to be working on. For this project, we'll get into the actual media in just a little bit. What we're really going to be talking about for this project is the idea of foreshortening. So what foreshortening is, specifically with this piece, you are going to have to come up with a design that is based on showing the human figure, showing one part of the human figure super close to you, and then getting that foreshortening or that perspective that the figure is moving back into space. So what does this really do? There's a few things that focusing on foreshortening in a work of art is going to do for you. First thing is it allows you to control the point of view of the viewer. So if you're looking at this classical Renaissance painting by Montaigne of the fallen Christ, what this does is, because of the foreshortening, you get that super up close view of the feet, and it brings it the feet of the Christ, and it symbolically with this piece, it puts you at the feet of Jesus, so that you really have an opportunity to be able to feel like you're close to him. It gives you that opportunity to create some sort of intimacy and interaction between the artwork that you're creating and the viewer who is looking at the artwork. So really what you've got to pay attention to with foreshortening is understanding what portion of the body you are going to be depicting as being closest to you, and what vantage point you want the viewer to end up coming through with. So just like you learned in beginning art and in intermediate art as well, the idea of foreshortening, it's really all about space. The things that are going to be closest to you in the picture are going to be larger or out of proportion, and then you're just going to be looking at the direction that the body is coming up so that you create that sense of depth and space. Now, with this particular painting, this is classic. If we're talking about foreshortening in art, this is one that you've absolutely got to see. But it's kind of overdone. This idea of the body being shown where the feet are down at the base. It's a little bit stagnant. It definitely has that religious overtone to it. That is not necessarily the direction that I am going to want you guys to go with. In this piece, you are going to really be playing with your cameras. You're going to be playing with this idea of you using the technology that you have and using the natural focal points of the camera. How the camera accentuates foreshortening. And all of your phone cameras, they all do this. They all have a slight fisheye or a slight curvature to the way that they take pictures, so they naturally accentuate things that are closer to you and things that are going farther away. So in this lesson, you're really going to be using your technology that you have in your hand to be able to control what your composition is going to look like. And really what I want you to do with this piece, I want you to play with exaggeration. So that when you look at these two pieces, now even though these both show the foreshortening of the body, you can tell that in the piece on the left, the Chuck Taylors are super close, and then the legs come up to the top. Your portrait, the picture that you make, does not have to be a full body portrait. That's not the direction that I'm going to be pushing you in. If you want to do a full body portrait with this project, it's totally fine. You have that opportunity to do so. But you can also choose to focus on very specific areas of the body. So looking at this piece over on the left, if you want to crop out and do something along the lines where you're looking at the feet and you're looking up towards the rest of the body and you cut off at the knees, that is absolutely 100% totally fine. If you want to focus directly on the hands, you can go go ahead and do that as well. You're not required to show the entire body here. What I am wanting to see is a part of the body, super, super up close into your field of view, super up close to your viewer, and being able to see that other parts of the body are going back into the distance. So details like this are absolutely a thing that you can go for. You can, if you want to go with a whole body portrait, you can do something along these lines as well. Remember, point of view. Really, like, to get this idea of foreshortening to come across, you've got to be able to figure out, where do you want to place your viewer? How is the viewer going to be looking at your subject? And you've got to plan that whole piece out. Who is your subject going to be? It can be yourself, it can be somebody in this room, it can be somebody outside of this room. That's all totally fine. But how are you going to accentuate this sense of depth in the human body itself? And how are you going to exaggerate this idea of closeness versus far? The other thing, so point of view is definitely a thing that you want to play with, but you've also got this idea of visual interaction. So you can make these portraits that you're going to be drawing, you can make these to the point of where the subject of your artwork is literally interacting with the viewer. That's the thing that I think is so interesting about getting into foreshortening portraits, is it allows you as the artist to have a way for your art to literally stick its finger out at the viewer and look directly at it. Like you're looking over at the left, or over on the right, you can create a portrait where the subject of your artwork is trying to get away. You can create that look of the portrait where the subject is looking up or looking down at the viewer. It's all about that interactive piece. This is that piece of the puzzle is really what's going to separate your artwork from everybody else's artwork in the class. Because depending on how you use your imagination to be able to compose the piece that you're going to be creating, you can really create a narrative. You can go in and create some sort of interaction that has intimacy with the viewer so that it draws the viewer in. Now, with foreshortened portraits, it doesn't necessarily have to be of people. If you want to get into the style of doing pet or animal style of portraits, those are really, really good with foreshortening. Simply because you can, like, especially with cats and dogs, you can really get into the muzzle, you can really get into the face, and show the rest of the body of the animal moving back. What I think is probably the most interesting use of foreshortening in art is when you have your subject coming forward and interacting with objects. So interaction with the viewer is good, but also interacting with objects, it creates more of a narrative with the viewer. So when you look at this, so you've got the girl sitting on the ground. These are all Christmas ornaments. So having these objects super up close to the viewer, once again, it tells a story. That's the other side of it. I don't want you to make a piece that's necessarily, here's just a picture of a person sitting on a chair and you're looking down or up with it. Create some dynamicism with this piece. Create some sort of hidden narrative or blatant narrative coming forward so that when your viewers are looking at the piece that you're going to be creating, that they can naturally build up a story. Probably the easiest way to create foreshortening is to have your subject in your art presenting something to their viewer. This is, other than the hand aspect, having your subject actually having something in their hand and presenting it to the viewer is a really, really easy way to get that show me near and show me far, far inside of the portrait itself, but it also brings up that particular narrative. It allows the viewers to start to put together the story and start to interact. If your subject is handing something or presenting something to the viewer, it's going to be impossible for the viewer to stop and go, what is this all about? It allows them to interact. And as artists, that's really all that we want our viewers to do, is interact and engage with the artwork that we create. Now, for this particular assignment, you've done a bunch of mixed media pieces. You've done a bunch of mixed media pieces so far over the course of this year. This last mixed media piece is going to be pretty traditional for you, actually. You're not going in and working on any sort of modified ground at all. The options for you to use on this mixed media piece, actually really tightening things up. The way that you're going to make this mixed media piece is you are going to use markers and colored pencils. You've got two options. And what's really going to make this process challenging for you is, for this particular piece, you are going to be operating on a limited palette. What a limited palette means is that you are going to be restricting the number of colors, true colors, that you can use inside of this piece. So this isn't going to be an assignment where you're going to be allowed to use 30 different colors of 30 different tints and shades. You always have access to all neutral colors. So browns, blacks, and grays, any brown, any black, any gray, those are all going to be options for you. But other than that, when we get down to the real actual colors, you can only use in this piece a grand total of 6. 6 colors, and that's it. That includes tints, that includes shades. And okay, hold on, I'm going to pause this. I need to use both of my hands, so I'm clipping on my. Oh, that's so loud. Clipping on the microphone. So what you're going to end up doing with this is, I want you to use the Copic markers that I have. There's a whole set of them over on the counter on the side. And you're going to use the markers as underdrawings. So once you get your basic drawing down, you can put your basic drawing down in pen and ink. You can put your basic drawing down in pencil. Probably a 2H or a 4H pencil would be the best, so that you're not dealing with smudging. What you're going to end up doing is working from dark to light, or light to dark, it depends on your style. You're going to go in and put the base color that you're going to be using in the marker itself. So this is just an abstract design that I did, whatever, it's just something real easy for me to show you the techniques that you're going to be using. So if my light source in this design is coming from the top left-hand corner, that would mean that everything on the left-hand side of this figure is going to be lighter. Everything on the right-hand side is going to end up being darker. So if I am only using a maximum of 6 colors, if I'm going in and doing this process like this, I've got my 4 colors going from light to dark with a complement that I can use going across. I would go in and I would start using my lightest tones first. On all of these markers, you've got a fine point on one end, you've got a chisel tip on the other end. And what's so great about these style of markers is it doesn't matter how many times you layer up on top of this. As you go over the top, I can draw that magenta directly through this all that I want, and it will never streak up. I'm never going to get a portion of this where it's going to end up being darker because of layering. The application is super, super even. So what you're going to do with these markers is you're just going to go in and you're going to lay down your base colors in whatever design it is that you're going to end up using. And really paying attention to this idea of color value, really paying attention to the idea of color fades coming through. So I'm going from that light pink all the way down to a deep ultramarine on the side to start to get these color details. And then from this point, once I get this through, then you can go in and you can use colored pencils on top of this to put in your fine details. This is the introduction to the idea of underpainting, but what you're doing here instead of underpainting is you're underdrawing. You're going in and you're blocking in all of your basic colors first, and then over the top of that, you can come in and start really pulling out the colors and designs that you want to use. And with the colored pencils, these layer up on top of your ink drawing incredibly, incredibly well, to the point of where you can go in and really get some crazy good color mixing and even color blending with the blending pencil on top, so that you will be able to go in and really control your details, control your textures, and fine-tune the types of values and types of colors that you're going to get coming across in this design. So what I want you to remember is that, number one, all neutral colors are on the table. Blacks, grays, whites, browns. You can use any of those, all of those that you want. So when you get to the actual portrait, skin tone is considered to be a neutral color. So you can go in and really get all of the skin tones of your subject drawn out and done well without ruining the color palette or taking up too much of your color choices there. You can go in and choose not to use any skin tones in this piece. Maybe your figure is going to be done using nothing but blacks and whites. That is also an option for you. The color tones and color palettes that you're going to use afterwards are really going to come in and create color contrast. My biggest suggestion to you is when you go in to decide the color tones that you're going to be using, start thinking about color schemes. Complementary colors are really, really strong with this. If you've got 6 colors, you can just go straight complements to be able to create those that color contrast and that color dynamic. Analogous color scheme, going from yellow all the way over to greens, going yellow all the way over to oranges and reds. That's another combination that you can have that's going to really allow you to create a specific visual tone or mood. So your job today, before we get into any of this, what I want, well, hold on, I'm going to go ahead and stop this now.